Welcome everybody to the first episode of the State of VRChat as part of the RetroYuuki's VRChat Zone podcast. Today we'll be talking about what has happened in May as we prepare for June. We're also going to be talking about big data, and we're talking about two big stories that could impact the next month as we get ready for VRChat content for everybody else. We're always going to be taking a look at a certain topic when it comes to VR chat when it comes to phones. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's take a look at what has happened in the last month in terms of big data. And for big data, we take a look at the player base. So last 30 days, we have seen a 21,366.7 players on average, for a gain of minus 27.3 players, or a gain of minus 0.13%. Peak players in the last 30 days as 36,871 in 24 hours, with a 24-hour peak so far of 26,397 players. Now keep in mind, I put this at all time, the graph, which is a little bit unfair, but you see where it is going. Okay, now compare that to April, where there was a 21,843.7 players on average for a gain of plus 998.5 players, or 4.79% from March. So, did anything happen to deviate the numbers? Not really much. It is more of your typical come back to VR chat later kind of scenario. Not really anything newsworthy. However, we did get some big news very recently, and for that we have to take a look at the recent developer update for VR chat, which I covered in the very first episode of this podcast, and that is called the creator economy. In short, basically, it allows users in the beta test mode, to receive donations or to receive support via VRChat users. So VRChat users can now donate to a VRChat creator. For example, as you know, here on this channel, we have been creating VRChat content, and I don't think you need to see more to know about that. All you have to see is my channel, is the channel. Emerald Peace is coming out, and we're starting potentially in June 2023. We have the podcast. We have the role plays. We have the Gia Chu and Kyle. Congratulations to them, by the way. They are now dating in VR chat. We have the reaction videos. We have the highlights stuff. So all this contributes to the content economy as well as the creator economy. So you can tell my channel, or the main channel, and the roleplay channel, RP Productions, is going to be based on VR chat. So now, does this mean I'm going to get the money from VR chat? Not necessarily, because we got to talk about the blog post. They mentioned that it's going to be in beta in the next few months, and particularly for those in the beta program, which I might join just in case. Now, keep in mind that even if you are a content creator for VR chat, they're not going to accept everybody. They're only going to accept a very few, 20 at most, because it's a brand new thing that they're working on. Keep in mind that it's going to be slow, because this is dealing with money, or you're dealing with real money here. Okay, so this is why they're taking their time on this beta rather than normal beta. Because for normal beta, normally they will be testing new features. But in this particular instance, they're dealing with a new feature that influences money. You do not want to lose money because of a bug or a glitch. That's the worst thing that can happen right now. Okay, especially when it's VR chat, and especially when a lot of content creators have VR chat as their main content. That includes us because of VR chat roleplay. Okay, now if you guys want an expanded blog, I have decided to introduce this particular episode. I mean, this particular article. It is the same thing, but it's expanded. If you guys want to learn more about the creator economy, check out either my episode, the first episode of the podcast, or read on this one, which will be in the description below. Now that we discussed the creator economy, let's talk about another thing that we need to talk about. Back in March 2023, there was an article, or there was a new thing that came out, and that is mobile. That's right. VRChat is going mobile, and on this article on March 30th of 2023, Harry Baker wrote this article: Mobile versions of VRChat in development, Android release coming soon. Now, before everybody freaks out, I do need to talk about why I believe this could be an interesting move for VRChat. Besides, oh, it's more players. Yeah, we need to talk about that more players portion here in a moment. Let's read the article first, though. So, in a new developer update, the VRChat team confirmed that there is a working mobile version of Android or VRChat. The team shared some footage of in-game running on Android, but stressed that there is an in-game development build and everything in the video is not finalized. Let's actually take a look at that said video, so that you guys can take a look at this. Also by our boy Tupper. We're not going to read this entire update. We're only going to be focused on the mobile aspect. So let's take a look at this. So as you can see, this particular developer is launching VRChat on Android device. And as you can see, it looks like your typical VRChat fare. And that's because it is your typical VRChat fare, only on an Android phone. And as you can see, your normal material is there. Your voice chat and all that good stuff. Your portals are there. Now, they did stress that not every portal is in there. They did stress that it's going to take a while. Okay, let's take a look at this. So, is it possible that this is a good thing? I'll talk about it. Okay, then we have this. We have this particular build here. This is a bigger version. Now, as you can see, it's like your typical mobile game. Like Apex Legends, we have COD mobile. We have Fortnite on the phone. So if the controls look very familiar, it's because it is. Okay. Now, let's go back to the article. The team says it's been working on this mobile version for a while already, and is already being used by some team member. The mobile version of VRChat is for Android will only be available for members of VRChat Plus. The service is optional paid subscription. The team plans to give members access to the mobile Android build within the next 3 to 4 months, which is subject to change, which will help them refine the UI and UX before a full public launch down the line. Okay. Now they talk about the avatars and the worlds, and they say on this, the team says that the world or avatars that work on Quest will load just fine on the Android mobile build, as both systems run on Android. However, some more advanced world content with complex controls may need to implement changes to account for those using a touchscreen. That said, the team says that many worlds were great, as is on an Android mobile version. So, as you can tell, a lot of the worlds that we visit in normal VRChat live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays, not today obviously because I'm going somewhere, uses some advanced controls. For example, there are certain worlds that offer you some interactive elements where you can fire a laser, you can do like a machine thingy, all that, and they need to have that on Android as a touchscreen button press. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And there's a lot of complex worlds out there that uses controls with touchscreen and clicking and buttons. And that's another thing we have to watch out for. Okay? Okay, now let's talk about this particular statement. Regarding iOS devices, also known as Apple, VRChat says they are working on a mobile version for iOS, but it is farther out than Android. The challenge here is content, since iOS uses a completely unique and different graphics framework. Explained the team. This means we would have to upload content built for iOS, which means 3 builds for one piece of content. Not ideal. So we're working on it, more on this eventually. So what is this talking about? So if you are not aware, VRChat world creators have to do 2 types of world uploads. Number 1, one for PC, and number 2, one for Quest users, also known as the headset users. Now, two versions is hard enough because you have to implement a lot of things. Now we have to work on a third version for our mobile friends, which is not ideal because now you have to triple the work. And because for iOS specifically, you have to work on different graphics framework, which takes a little bit of a long time because you have to develop that within the stuff. Okay? Now, here's another thing. VRChat is not the only VR service that has released or is working on a mobile equivalent. Walkabout Mini Golf plans to release Pocket Edition for iOS soon, while competing social VR service Rec Room released an Android mobile version in 2021. The Rec Room is like VR, but remember, Rec Room came from PlayStation. Which leads me into my next topic. Next portion of this podcast episode. How is the video game marketplace changed? And why are we going mobile for VR chat in particular? For that, we need to take a look at some numbers. And I would like to introduce you to this particular site. And this shows you how many smartphones are in the world. As you can see here, number of smartphone and mobile phone users worldwide in the billions as of today. Now keep in mind, as you can see here, there are going to be forecasts up to 2025. Now keep in mind, these are just a forecast, so don't take it to the bank, as we say. So back in 2020, the number of smartphones in the billions is 6.05, and number of mobile phones is 6.95. Okay, that's 6.95 billion. This year, according to the forecast for 2023, it is going to be 6.92 of the smartphone and 7.33 of the mobile phone. Okay? Now, how many people have smartphones in the world? It's 6.92 billion, which is equivalent to 86.29% of people today. Okay? So that's a lot of people. Okay, considerable. Now, there is another market we need to tackle. Why are the smartphone being used for video game? Well, to reach their audience. Obviously, that's number one. Number one, marketing. There's a lot of phone users nowadays that play video games on their phone and console. But the trend eventually is this puppy right here, the phone. Now, it may not seem like much, but the trend is there. But why VRChat? What's my opinion on VRChat on the phone? Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. We need to answer another question. And that question, my friends, on this podcast, if you're listening on the YouTube, is this: how many kids are using a smartphone? Let's see. So I'm gonna say that there's a lot of kids using a smartphone right now, but the the age here, it's very young, basically. What is the age of smartphone? Not age of smartphone. How young are kids using a smartphone? Ah, 42% of kids have a smartphone by age 10. That means somewhere before 10 years old, they already have a smartphone. By 12, it's 71%. By 14, it's 91%. I do not think I got my first smartphone until I was 10 or 14. I forget, but it was in around that area. So 42% at 10 already. Okay, that's alarming. That's actually alarming here. By 12 it's 71%, and by 14 it's 91%. But why am I showing you this particular data in terms of VRChat? I want to stress this number here, or these two particular percentages. Remember, VRChat is supposed to be used by people who are 13 or over, according to their policy. 13 or over, okay? And 71% of this particular area here with the kids is already younger than 13. But here's the caveat. With kids in play, with kids trying to play VRChat at a very young age, remember in psychology that the brain has to develop with what they do, especially young kids. The young kids do not have their brain developed to the max capacity yet. Okay, it's not when you're like 20 plus year old that it's getting closer. But when you're younger, your brain is still developing. So when we talk about like kids and they're playing VRChat, especially on a phone for that matter, they're going to see what we do, right? And they're going to be influenced by what we do as content creators. And here's the caveat to that. Remember, there are some people in VRChat who do not so good things. Not so good things in VRChat. Yes, it's a game. Yes, it's an experience. However, when we're talking about young kids and brains still developing in psychology, that's not good. Especially if the brain is not fully developed. Okay? And remember, remember, that's psychology for you. A little bit of psychology. Okay? The brain needs to develop, and whatever the kid sees, the brain is going to interpret that, and is going to mold what the kid wants to do, or the child, I should say, wants to do. And them doing VR chat on a phone like this is going to influence them to do weird stuff. Let's just say about that. And there might be trauma related to later. Okay? So here's my full but non professional opinion about this. If we take a look at this at face value, mobile VR chat at face value, okay, like what it is and all that good stuff. VR chat is making a okay move. Okay, it's an okay mid move. And the reason why I say mid is because yes, you do get to reach a lot more people in the mobile market, especially nowadays, with a lot of people using smartphones now and Android devices for that matter. You're going to get a lot of people who want to play, who want to try it out for the first time, who want to experience VR on a phone. And and by itself is not a bad idea. And because most of the time, most of the games nowadays are being ported over to the phone, like Apex Legends, Call of Duty, Fortnite, for example. But when it comes to the age group, that's the concerning part. Like we just aforementioned, if the younger audience and the kids, if I will, if I can say, like before the age of 10, if they get their hands on VR chat and they go to the wrong crowd inside of VR chat, that can be very detrimental to the brain development. Now, I know I went into a lot of psychology and a lot of anatomy, but I had to do this because by like remember I had to do that because part of this podcast is to teach you guys not just about VR chat news, but VR chat implementation into today's society. And that's why I'm going to say that kids doing VR chat is not a good idea. Now, I do appreciate what VR chat is doing here with their marketing and reaching out. But is the mobile version of VR chat going to be any different? Obviously, yes. No voice mod, obviously. That means no Francis the Fox or Francis the Wolf voice. I know a lot of people think it's cute, and it is. But then you have kids trying to mimic content creators. You have furries. You have the furry community. You have the Sonic community. You have the Mario community. It sounds all nice and peaceful until you figure out that what content we do on VR chat is completely different from what you're thinking of. I want you to draw your attention to a lot of the content we do. The content we do is kid friendly for now. It's kid friendly because you have just a regular roleplay fight. Okay, you have a roleplay fight. All you have to do is look at Fiona Awakens Kyle's true form in VR chat question mark, and that was uploaded 3 days ago. And we have another video coming out within the next few hours, within the next few days, where Kyle gets his glasses. But my point for pointing out this video is that this is just a roleplay fight. Okay? This is just a roleplay fight like you would see in a movie. But I want to clarify one thing. There's no blood, there's no violence. But this is tame, T-A-M-E. This is tamer than what you're going to see from other content creators. Other content creators is going into the whole 18 plus category. 18 plus category, folks. We're not even close there. But that's why I believe VRChat on mobile, especially when it comes to young kids, is not a good move. In my personal, non-professional opinion. But then again, it's a great move for marketing, bad move when it comes to kids, good move when it comes to people who want to play now. That's the thing. So I'm so mid. I am so mid on this one when it comes to mobile VRChat. I know I talked about so much about VRChat on mobile, but I think it's a big idea. It's a big topic for this month and last month and March, especially as we head into that typical, very important part of the year, June, July, August, where it's going to set up for fall. If you guys know what I mean, it's a very enticing thing. But in my opinion, is it worth getting Android VRChat or in some cases mobile VRChat on iOS? In my personal opinion, when it comes to mobile games, because I have played a few of them before, even if it's not VRChat, my opinion is no. At this time, it's a no. Because it's so new on mobile phone that sometimes it's going to break. The game is going to break because number one, you have a lot of people changing avatars at the same time. Number two, you have different worlds that are too complex. And number three, some of those said worlds are going to be complex enough to the point you have to implement 745 buttons, and implement 745 functions to said buttons, and do a lot of this and that. And remember, iOS in particular has a different graphics framework. So for that reason, those developing worlds have to deal with a lot of things from Apple, especially with the graphics framework. And remember, they also have to implement the buttons that they do if the world has different buttons for different functionality. It's a very complicated subject, for sure. Mobile gaming. But it's a very intriguing and a very interesting topic to talk about. So when is the next episode of the podcast? The next episode of the podcast will be when the next drop of the blog. It's supposed to be today, but I'm going to see what time it comes out, because when it comes out, I might be out of the house. Okay? But stay tuned for another podcast that might return for the 2023-2024 season that I have not talked about for a very long time. It has something to do with a familiar sport, with a familiar Los Angeles team. I wonder if you know what I'm talking about. So that is all for today's extended talk about the State of VRChat. The next time we're going to be doing State of VRChat is going to be June 30th, 2023, when we talk about what has happened this month. So that's it. We'll see you guys on the next podcast of VRChat Zone. Enjoy, and hopefully you learned something today.